So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies video. I'm, of course, Spike Knight, and in these videos, I love talking about things, movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's video, I'm reviewing the new Edgar Wright film, The Running Man. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Running Man is yet another Stephen King adaptation to come out this year. We've already had The Long Walk, which was really good. We had The Life of Chuck, which wasn't really for me. And we had The Monkey, which I think came out in February this year. It came out what feels like quite a bit ago now, and yeah, that was another Stephen King adaptation as well, but that film again wasn't for me. And now we are on to The Running Man. This is the newest Stephen King adaptation to come out, and it is the newest film to be directed by Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright, who is probably my favourite director working today. I'm not saying he's the best director working today, I'm not saying that at all, but he's probably my personal favourite because all of Edgar Wright's films before this, I have loved. I have loved two pieces, and not just his films. I loved the episodes of Spaced, which he directed as well. He directed all the episodes of the TV show Spaced, which is where he first worked with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who he went on to work with on Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. You know, yeah, he directed all the episodes of Spaced, and I thought he did an absolutely amazing job directing Spaced. And then after Spaced, he directed Shaun of the Dead with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, and I love Shaun of the Dead. Love it to pieces. Then he directed Hot Fuzz. That was their follow-up. That was the second film in the Cornetto trilogy, as it is called, as it is often referred to as. And I love Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is one of my favourite films of all time. And then they worked together on The World's End a good few years later. And although I think The World's End has its flaws, I still absolutely love it. It's a comfort movie for me. And Edgar Wright has also worked outside of the British film industry. I say outside of the British film industry. Well, yeah, he's still a big figure in the British film industry, but he's also worked in American movies. He's worked with American actors, and he's worked with American actors with the likes of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of those movies that the first time I saw it, I didn't get it at all. I was watching it thinking, this might be the first Edgar Wright movie that I just don't like. And that's how I felt walking away from it after watching it for the first time. But then I decided to give it a rewatch. I was like, maybe I missed something, because I heard a lot of film pundits that I follow online, you know, talk rave about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's give it another chance. And the second time I watched it, I fell in love with it. I think Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is an absolute masterpiece. I love that movie to pieces. I understand why it's not for everybody, but I think it's genius. And after Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Edgar Wright went to go and direct Baby Driver. He was meant to direct Ant-Man afterwards. He was meant to direct Ant-Man after Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, but his relationship with Marvel kind of fell apart, and instead we got Baby Driver, which I think is one of his best movies as well. I love Baby Driver to pieces. I've heard some people say they don't love Baby Driver. My brother doesn't love Baby Driver, and I don't get it. I don't get how he can't love Baby Driver. It's fantastic. And then after Baby Driver, he went back to directing a British film, and that British film was Last Night in Soho. Now, Last Night in Soho wasn't for everybody. I mean, I reviewed it on this channel, and after reviewing it, I was like, oh my god, there's people who don't like this film, and I was kind of shocked by that, because I absolutely loved Last Night in Soho. I thought it was my favourite film of 2021. That was the year that it came out. It was my favourite film of that year, and even though I thought it was one of Edgar Wright's weaker movies, quote-unquote weaker films, I still thought it was absolutely brilliant. You get the point I am making. I am a huge Edgar Wright fan. I even love his documentary. I almost forgot to mention the documentary they released in 2021. That was the other film they released in 2021. Yeah, he released two films in 2021. He released Last Night in Soho, and he released a documentary, The Sparks Brothers, which I also absolutely love. You get the point I'm making. I love Edgar Wright, and whenever he brings out a new movie, it's an event for me. You know, the same way that Marvel Marvel films an event for so many people. I mean, maybe not as much nowadays, but, you know, the same way certain movies, like, say, an Avatar movie, or the same way, like, a Star Wars movie, I mean, a Star Wars movie is for me as well, clearly, just look behind me. But yeah, the same way all these big blockbusters are event movies for people. They're movies that people look forward to watching. The movies that people count down on their calendar, to watch. You know, whenever a new Edgar Wright film comes out, it's an event for me. I look forward to it tremendously. And when I heard that he was directing this film, I was like, okay, I am interested. Just with the two words Edgar Wright attached to it, just with the name Edgar Wright attached to this film, I immediately became interested in it. But I knew barely anything about this film when it was announced about a year ago. I think it was announced about a year ago now that it was going into production. I hadn't seen the original, which stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. But since this film got announced about a year ago, I did watch the original. I say the original, I watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. It's not really connected to this version. This version isn't a remake of that version, is the point I'm making. The original with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I think came out in 1988, it's like a different take on this story. That's what it is. It's also, you know, it's adapted from the Stephen King novel, but again, it's a different take on the Running Man story, and it's more of an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle. It's more of a film centered around the fact that it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, same way like Predator or Commando, you know. They were films centered around Arnold Schwarzenegger, and The Running Man is no different. The Running Man from 1988 is no different. And I watched that about a couple months ago now, and I didn't really dislike it, but I thought it was okay. It didn't blow me away. There's some people who talk about that movie who hold it in high regard and have this great love for that film. I personally don't really get that. There are interesting parts of The Running Man to the Arnold Schwarzenegger version of The Running Man, but again, I didn't love it. And I was hoping that Edgar Wright was going to do justice to this story, because there are very, like I said, the interesting parts to the Running Man story that I was first introduced to with the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. But, you know, I thought Edgar Wright could really make something special out of this film. And again, whenever Edgar Wright brings out a new film, I get so excited. And this was one of my most anticipated movies for this year because of the name Edgar Wright. I love all of his movies. It feels like all of his previous films have been made for me specifically. I love all of them in their own ways. So yes, you get what I'm saying. I was dead excited about watching this film. My excitement was a little bit tempered when I heard Glenn Powell was going to be in it, because I'm not a big Glenn Powell fan. I'm not really getting all the love surrounding him. I didn't think he was that good in Twisters, which was the last thing I think I saw him in. And there was something else I saw which I wasn't blown. Yeah, I didn't love him in Top Gun Maverick, actually. I mean, I think he was good in Top Gun Maverick, but I didn't love him in that either. But still, yes. Even when I heard Glenn Powell was in it, who I'm not really a big fan of and don't really get the love surrounding, I was still looking forward to watching this film. Just because Edgar Wright was directing it. When I heard Edgar Wright was directing this film, I was like, okay, that's now immediately become one of my most anticipated movies for 2025. And I watched this movie earlier today, and I have quite a few things to say about it. But just before I get into my initial thoughts, I'm going to do a quick plot synopsis for this film in case you're wondering what it is about. Based on the Stephen King novel, in the near future, the quote-unquote The Running Man is the top rated show on television, a deadly competition where contestants must survive 30 days while being hunted by professional assassins. Desperate for money to save his sick daughter, Ben Richards, played by Glenn Powell in this film, is convinced by the show's ruthless producer, played by, Josh Brolin. I forgot who plays producer in the film. Yes, Josh Brolin plays producer, to enter the game as a last resort. Josh Brolin's character convinces Glenn Powell's character to enter this game as a last resort to save his sick daughter. Ratings soon skyrocket as Ben's defiance, instincts and grit turn him into an unexpected fan favourite, as well as a threat to the entire system. And that's pretty much all you need to know about The Running Man before seeing it. And here's the thing about this film. As somebody who has absolutely loved, and I mean loved, all of Edgar Wright's films and his work on space, I hate to say it, but I didn't love this film. That being said, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought this film was a blast. And what I liked about it is that you could still tell it was directed by Edgar Wright. So many times nowadays, I talk about it, a lot of the big Hollywood blockbusters that I review, you can't tell that there is a director behind the film. It just feels like a studio power movie. And the movie can still be enjoyable, but it's lacking that authorship. It's lacking that director's vision. And I'm not saying Edgar Wright's stamp fully comes throughout this film. I'm not saying it comes through all the time, but nevertheless, you can still tell that this is a film directed by Edgar Wright. It's got Edgar Wright's stamp on it, whether it's in the heart of the film. You know, all of Edgar Wright's films have this strong beating heart, and this film is no different. There are a few, not a lot, but a few great needle drops, you know, when a song kicks in, and Edgar Wright is known for that. Think about, you know, Shaun of the Dead, when you get the sequence when they're Don't Stop Me Now, and they're using the snooker cues to kill the zombie. It's one of the best sequences in that film. And you think about the start of Hot Fuzz, where Goody Two Shoes by Adam Ant is playing. Then you think about Baby Driver with that beginning, which is, you know, the point I'm making is Edgar Wright is known for his fantastic needle drops in his movies, and you get some really good needle drops in this film, but maybe not quite as much as I was hoping for, and I'll talk about that a bit more later in this film, but later on in this review, sorry. But you do still get some good needle drops in this film, which make it feel like an Edgar Wright movie, and it's got that energy about it. It's got that, there's certain ways he directs the film, like the crash zooms and the way he built up intensity in certain action sequences that feels very Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright, his authorship, his style does come through in this movie, which sounds like a small thing, but this is a film with Paramount behind it. You know, Paramount, which is one of the big studios that apparently might be buying Warner Brothers soon, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. That's another topic for another day. But yeah, Paramount, which is one of the big studios, this is one of their big tempo releases for this time of the year, and you know, it's so difficult for directors who are working with big studios to get their vision across nowadays. A lot of the time, it just doesn't happen unless you're Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve directing the Dune movies. It just doesn't really happen. You know what I mean? And yeah, when you get to this film, I like that it still feels like an Edgar Wright movie. And you know what? It feels like Edgar Wright's attempt. Yeah, it feels like Edgar Wright's not attempt. That's not the right word, but it feels like his take on a Hollywood action blockbuster, and I mean that for better and for worse. You know, there are parts of the film which I really like how he kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of adds his own twist on a Hollywood action blockbuster. But there are parts of the film I'm thinking, yeah, maybe he wasn't the right person for directing this film. But what I'm trying to say is that I do like that you can still tell this is an Edgar Wright film. I like how he puts his twist, his own take on a Hollywood blockbuster. I'm not saying that all works, but I do like that he puts his own take on a Hollywood action blockbuster, nevertheless. And I do think Glenn Powell is great in the lead. I'm not a big Glenn Powell fan. I'm still not sold on him, but I actually enjoyed watching him in this film because he gave a different performance than I've seen him do in Top Gun Maverick and in Twisters. I almost forgot the other film that he was in then. Even so I mentioned it earlier on this review. Yeah, he gave a different performance in this film than I thought he was going to give, and I quite enjoyed watching him. I didn't feel like I was watching Glenn Powell. I felt like I was watching Ben Richards, and I do think, you know, he really throws himself into this role. He gets himself dirty, and I always like when an actor gets himself dirty for this role, particularly an actor who is as handsome as Glenn Powell. Yeah, I thought he was really good in the lead. Com Domingo steals the show every time he's on screen. Josh Brolin, you can tell he's having a lot of fun playing this role. There's dissimilar. Yeah, his role in this film is not too dissimilar than his role in the new Knives Out, which I've already seen. Check out my review of that if you haven't already. Yeah, he's not too dissimilar in this film than he is in the new Knives Out, which is coming out later this month, actually, in cinemas, and then comes out on Netflix in December. Yeah, he is having a great time playing this role in the film, and I really enjoyed watching him. Lee Pace, which many people might know from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and he was also in the Hobbit movies. He plays the villain in this film, and I really liked him too. I thought all the performances worked, and I did think that the relationship, the core relationship in the film, which isn't on screen that often, but it's like the main thing that makes the film work, and that is the relationship between Glenn Powell's character Ben Richards and his wife and his kid. I did think that was believable. I've heard some people criticise it. No, I believed in it. Yeah, I heard one film put it that I follow online, who I have great respect for, called That Relationship Hollow. But again, I believed in it, and because I believed in it, that made the heart of the film work, and the action sequences are at times enormously enjoyable to watch. There were quite a few moments during the action sequences where I was like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this, and I think I'm enjoying this so much because it does have Edgar Wright authorship, his vision, his stamp, his director style seeping in there in the way you want it to. And this film has a great energy about it, which keeps you engaged, in my opinion. It moves at a brisk pace that I really liked. And I heard one critic, I really need to stop listening to critics and film pundits before I watch a film, because sometimes when I'm watching a film, I'm thinking, really, did that film critic think that? I didn't get that from this. And I heard one film critic say about this movie before seeing it that it's just action sequence after action sequence, but it's really not. I do think the film is paced well. I mean, it's a little clunky at times, and I'll get onto that shortly in this review, but I do think it's paced well, and I don't think it's just action sequence after action sequence after action sequence. If it was, believe me, I would say that, but I do not think that is the case when it comes to the film, and I do think it's paced well, and yeah, it's got some interesting messages and some interesting themes that it's exploring, and it's exploring them in a way which I think works with this style of film. I've heard some people say it doesn't treat the serious subject matter behind it seriously enough, and I don't totally agree with that because of the nature of this type of film. I think it treats the serious subject matter in the way that the film wants to explore it. If you follow my thinking, if you've seen the film, hopefully you will. And yes, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I would 100% watch this film again. But, and I hate to say it again, this is the one Edgar Wright film that I don't love, and I didn't come out the cinema loving. I might love it when I rewatch it, and I definitely will rewatch it. I might love this film in the future. I very well might, but right now I don't. And for me, this is Edgar Wright's weakest film to date. Again, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't want to make it sound like I dislike this film. I really didn't. I had a great time watching it. I had a far better time watching this than I did watching many action movies, action blockbusters that I've seen over the past good few years now. I enjoyed it a lot more than most action blockbusters I've seen. I enjoyed it more than Predator Badlands, which I saw earlier this week. But I didn't love it. And I think I didn't love it because Edgar Wright's style didn't quite come through as much as I hoped it would. Again, you can still tell this is an Edgar Wright movie. I'm not saying you can't. I made a big point of that earlier on this review. But I wish you felt that more. You know, Last Night in Soho, which is a very different film than this film, you know, obviously. That was his last movie before this. Yeah, I think it came out after the Sparks Brothers documentary. And Last Night in Soho felt like an Edgar Wright movie, inside and out. And I get that it wasn't for everybody. Again, I loved that movie to pieces. And this film, though, did not have that same Edgar Wright thing about it. That Edgar Wright touch that makes me go, wow! There's no one moment in this film I'm thinking, oh yeah, this film was made specifically for me. This was the first Edgar Wright film where it felt like he was appealing more, trying to appeal more to the masses. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like he was maybe making the movie he necessarily wanted to. It felt like there was some studio interference, which is what you expect from a movie like this. You know, all big budget movies have studio interference. It's just what happened. It's the nature of big budget blockbuster studio filmmaking. So you know, there's no unexpected here. But this film did feel like it had some studio interference, and it felt like maybe the producers were saying to Edgar Wright, you know, we're trying to make this a blockbuster that people can go and watch and that will appeal to all these people, you know. And whilst one of the things I really liked about Last Night in Soho was that it felt like maybe it wasn't appealing to everybody, and that it'll become this sort of cult classic in years to come. And I actually liked that a lot about that film. And personally, I would have preferred if he did something more in his own wheelhouse when it comes to this film. You know what I mean? I would have preferred if he did something that's more up his alley and not try to appeal to the masses so much. It's trying to have its cake and eat it too. It's trying to be an Edgar Wright film and be a blockbuster as well. And I'm not sure those two quite come together. I don't know if Edgar Wright's vision quite succeeds at the end of the day. And what you get, like I've said before, is his take on a Hollywood blockbuster, his take on a Hollywood action blockbuster at that. But I also would have liked to see that Edgar Wright the Edgar Wright style, the Edgar Wright authorship, the Edgar Wright vision fully shine through the same way it does with pretty much all of his previous movies. So I did miss some of that Edgar Wright authorship that I've come to love in all of his previous work, and I did also think there could have been a couple more needle drops, because again, Edgar Wright is so well known for his needle drops. The Don't Stop Me Now scene in Shaun of the Dead it's iconic. The beginning of Hot Fuzz with Goody Two Shoes by Adam Ant playing is brilliant. There's I can't remember what the song is. Was it 20 Seconds to Comply from The World's End, where Nick Frost goes, I fucking hate this town. Then 20 Seconds to Comply starts playing. And again, that's a brilliant needle drop in the film. And the beginning of Baby Driver, or the song Ramona by Beck in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. There are so many amazing needle drops in all of Edgar Wright's movies. In Last Night in Soho, when she's going back into the 60s, and there's that song by Cilla Black playing. I mean, I could go on and on and on, and I hate to say it, but I don't think there's really a moment in this film I can go, oh, that's a great Edgar Wright needle drop. And again, that goes back to that whole thing where I think he's not necessarily making the film he 100% wanted to make. I think he's making the film that the studio wanted to make and put his own spin on it at the same time. And I personally prefer the Edgar Wright movies where it feels like his vision through and through. And I hope that the next film he makes is a smaller British film like Last Night in Soho, or like on the lines of Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz or The World's End, and make it his film through and through again. Because although I enjoyed this movie, I didn't love it. I think I didn't love it because it didn't 100% feel like an Edgar Wright movie to me. It felt like there was also some studio interference, and it felt like they were trying to make Glenn Powell a star in this movie. And I do think he is a movie star. I do think he's an actor you're going to see in years and years to come in plenty of blockbusters. But again, I can't help but escape the feeling that maybe this isn't the movie that Edgar Wright needed to direct after Last Night in Soho. I think that he maybe should have carried on with that sort of film. And I understand why he did this movie, because Last Night in Soho bombed and it didn't do, massively well with the critics. But yeah, I wanted this to feel more like an Edgar Wright movie than it did at the end of the day. And I think that's ultimately why I didn't love it. And also, there was something at the ending which didn't quite work for me. It didn't quite make sense. I think the ending overall works. I quite like the ending, actually. But there was this one thing at the ending, one thing in the big finale of the film, I was like, okay, that doesn't quite work. What's going on there? Can you explain that to me? Maybe it's because I'm dumb, But, I was slightly confused by the end of the film. and there are some clunky parts of the film as well. Like, I do think the beginning is a little clunky. I think the build up to the Running Man could have been done better, and I do think there are parts in the middle, like this whole section with Emilia Jones and Glenn Powell in a car together, which I don't think fully works and maybe needed a bit more polish. Actually, no, it didn't maybe need a bit more polish. It definitely needed a bit more polish. And yeah, there are parts of the film which do feel clunky. And, you know, the reality is, I heard in an interview that Edgar Wright started shooting this movie about a year ago now. He said he started shooting this movie in November 2024. And I hate to say it, but you can kind of tell that it kind of feels a bit rushed at times. And again, if Edgar Wright had more time, I think his style would have shone through more. And I think that's my thing with the film overall. I just want it to feel more like an Edgar Wright movie. I mean, again, it feels like an Edgar Wright movie. I'm not saying it doesn't. It has the energy of an Edgar Wright film. It has the beating heart of an Edgar Wright film. And, you know, there's so many moments where it's like Edgar Wright's style was coming through and I was smiling from ear to ear. But it doesn't come through in the same way that it comes through in Hot Fuzz, which is another action movie. And the thing is about Hot Fuzz, that's like Edgar Wright making a Hollywood blockbuster in a small English town that he grew up in. That's what it's like, and I love that about Hot Fuzz. It's an action, it's a Hollywood action movie made in a small British town, and I love that about it. But with The Running Man, it feels like Edgar Wright's take on a Hollywood action movie, on a Hollywood action blockbuster, and I just would have liked there to be more of a stamp about it. I would have liked that moment when I go, oh wow, the Edgar Wright kick is kicking in, you know what I mean? Edgar Wright's fully there, his vision's coming through all the time. And maybe I'm just speaking nonsense, I don't know, but I was hoping for more, and I was hoping to come out the cinema going, okay, that is one of the best action movies I've seen over the past decade, and that's one of my favourite movies of this year. And I'm not sure whether I'd say that. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'd say it's one of my favourite movies of this year. I mean, I might come to the end of this year. Who knows? Maybe be like my 10th, 9th, or 8th favourite film of this year. But right now, I'm not sure if I'd say that. I'm not sure, and that kind of pains me to say. You know, it's the first Edgar Wright film that I didn't love. And although that is sad to say, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's the thing that matters the most. I came out the cinema with a smile. I didn't come out the cinema thinking, wow, the same way I came out of Last Night in Soho, in the same way I felt after watching Baby Driver and Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and The World's End and Scott Pilgrim. We'll have to watch that for the second time, but you get the point I'm making. You know, I didn't come out of this film the same way I came out of other Edgar Wright movies, but I did still come out of this film with a smile on my face and with a spring in my step, thinking, you know what, that was worth a watch, and it was worth watching in the cinema as well. And as someone who's an Edgar Wright fan, I enjoyed this film enough. And maybe I enjoyed it because I'm an Edgar Wright fan. I was looking for the Edgar Wright stuff in there. But also, there is other things to enjoy outside the whole Edgar Wright of it all when it comes to this film. Glenn Powell does do a good performance, and I think he's a good lead and is magnetic, and you really enjoy watching him. And there are some really great action set pieces, and the world building of this film I think was really well done. And yeah, tonally it's a bit all over the place, but I actually think that kind of works in this film's favour. It's a bit messy, but again, that kind of works in this film's favour. And again, there are so many parts of this film which work. I just don't love it, and I wish that I did. But still, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and that's the thing which matters the most. You know, it's one of the better action movies that I've seen over the past good few years. And you know what? I'll take that. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that The Running Man, I'm going to say that it's a 7.5 out of 10. And given that rating, I usually give films Actually, no, I'm going to amend that. I'm going to give it a 7.8 out of 10. Because I usually give a film a 7.5 out of 10 if I just thought it was solid. And I didn't just think this film was solid. I thought it was better than solid. You know, I think I gave Predator Badlands earlier. No, actually, I gave that much worse than I wasn't really a big fan of Predator Badlands, in all honesty. And you know, the same way people came out of Predator Badlands is kind of the way I came out of this film. It's not without its flaws. But again, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I thought it worked. And yes, there's a lot of serious themes and messaging behind what's going on in the film. But again, I thought the way this film approached all those themes and all those messaging, and all that messaging worked well in the film's context, you know? I did think that worked. And although I have my problems, and although it's not an Edgar Wright film inside and out like pretty much all of his previous movies, yeah, like all of his previous movies before this, Edgar Wright's stamp still is there when you come to this film. You can still see it in there. Not all the time, but you can still see it in there. And I did like that about it. And I did like that about this film. I just wish there was another Neo drop in there, you know? There wasn't a moment where the soundtrack really stood out. And I kind of wish there was. And that might sound like a small thing for some people, but for me, the soundtrack to an Edgar Wright movie is one of the things that I get excited about when a new Edgar Wright movie comes out. And I do think the soundtrack is a little disappointing, but again, there was so much to like about the film, as I've said in this review today, and I did think that Edgar Wright's style came through, just not quite as much as I hoped it would, but it still came through, and I liked that was his take on Hollywood action blockbuster. I just hope his next film isn't the same, you know? I hope he doesn't do another take on a Hollywood blockbuster. I hope he doesn't do another big budget movie. I want him to do something like Last Night in Soho, or something like Shaun of the Dead, or Hot Fuzz, or even The World's End. Just take the budget down a bit and make something which is your film through and through, because I'm not sure this film is. That being said, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said before, I thought it was one of the better action movies that I've seen over over the past few good years. Yeah, I had a blast with this film, and I'm so happy that I did. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this video today, The Running Man is a 7.8 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's video. If you have seen The Running Man, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching or listening. Yeah, I suppose you could listen to this video if you wanted to. You could stick it on the background whilst doing something else. You know, you never know. Yeah, thank you so much for watching or listening to this video. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this video. And look forward to many more videos and many more, yeah, I was about to say podcasts then. I don't do podcasts anymore. Look forward to many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this video, and I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.